You got yourself a fast little ship? I'd forgotten what engine sounded like. The closest thing to that on Kashyyyk is an uller in mating season. Ugh, frightful. Or it could be for the free food. What's the gunk that comes out of a synthesizer on this bucket anyway? Do you never clean the darn thing? I'm old, damn it. I'm allowed to be enigmatic when I want to be. And don't you go telling me otherwise. You know, you remind me of someone else I knew ages ago. Pleasant enough fellow, great destiny, all of that. Breath like a bantha. Anyway, where was I? Oh yes, Andor Vex was his name. The Force swirled around him like a hurricane. That's how great his destiny was. Well, it turned out that poor Andor believed a wee bit too much in the infallibility of that destiny. That overconfidence turned out to be his downfall. Let's see. Oh yes, Andor's downfall. I was pretty young myself when it happened. At the time, I thought that Andor's destiny couldn't be more boring. Well, let's just say that I was a strapping young lad with a full head of hair, and Coruscant was a small town with a well. I was just about to abandon Andor to whatever the Force intended for him when his ship was overtaken by a Dimian warship. Now, you've probably never heard of the Dimians, but at the time they were a nasty lot led by a nastier overlord named Krat. Tall fellow, big teeth. Krat has us hauled onto the bridge of his ship for questioning, and that's when I knew that Andor's destiny was at hand. Well, Andor decides that his destiny makes him invulnerable and starts making all sorts of demands. Free me now. I'm not answering questions. Blah, blah, blah. Don't you know who I am? Yeah. Krat decides he's had enough and begins crushing Andor's neck. I told the boy he should have kept his mouth shut. I think he agreed, too, or those could have just been gurgling noises. Oh, well, anyway. Finally, Krat has enough of Andor and tosses him aside into this giant energy intake shaft. Andor gets sucked in and starts bouncing around. He's screaming. Maybe Andor hit something sensitive on the way down or just didn't agree with the reactor core. Next thing I know, all the ship's alarms are ringing. Everyone panics and I run, barely making it to the ship in time before the explosion. Krat dies horribly, and the Dimians never quite recovered. Changed the political course of the entire sector for centuries to come. I'd call that quite a destiny, wouldn't you? Well, hey, the chances may not be great, but when one has the opportunity to see something like that twice in a lifetime... Anyway, go on. My throat is dry and you're making me cranky. Shoot! At any rate, I already told you why I wanted to leave. I'd seen everything I wanted to on Kashyyyk. Time to go. Time to move on. You live in an overgrown stump with a tax beating down your door and you tell me how happy you would be. I was pleased just to have visitors. How many kilometer-high trees can you find an interest in before you figure you've had enough? I'd bet you can't be bothered to stay in one room for more than 15 minutes. And then there's all the critters in the Shadowlands. I'm just happy to be back in space, doing something new. Is that too much to ask? I'll admit, for all its flaws, Kashyyyk was home enough. But when you came along and I saw the destiny you had before you, I couldn't help but be intrigued. In fact, everything about you that I can see is odd. Slightly off, as if my eyes are trying to trick me. Something is very dark about you. But, I'm sure you don't need to hear my ruminations. You've probably got enough nosy Jedi offering you one opinion after another to make you sick. Your future will come of its own accord, trust me. Sometimes navel-gazing at it doesn't get you anywhere. I wouldn't worry about it too much if I were you. You remind me a bit of Nomi. And that can't be all bad. Nomi Sunrider. She came late to the Force, just as you have, and became one of the greatest Jedi ever. Oh, fine lass. Whether you'll follow the same path remains to be seen. For one thing, we'll never get anywhere if you stand around chatting up old men all day. One thing I will say is that this little escapade does remind me a bit of my adventuring days before the war. Those were exciting times. Or at least it would remind me of those times if we didn't stand around. What's keeping you? You're too young to be so talkative. Shoo! Yes, I was an adventurer. Happy now? I wasn't even done with my Jedi training back then. I had a full head of hair and an eagerness to see absolutely everything. Sound familiar? The Council was never happy with willful, brash Jolee Bindo, you see. Even less so when I began my smuggling career. Don't look at me like that, damn it. I wasn't always the wrinkled coot I am now, you know. I can still fight, too. So wipe off that smirk I see there. At the time, the Yukata system was interdicted by its own king. He preferred to keep his people starving and poor, all the better to oppress them. The Senate was trying to negotiate a peace, but they were getting nowhere as usual. I decided I wasn't going to wait. I found myself a ship and a partner, and we began smuggling food and supplies to the Yukata citizenry through the blockade. Well, we didn't buy all the equipment per se. Some were happy to donate goods. Some we just knew had more than they could use. Stole is such a harsh word. They would have donated those goods readily enough if they were compassionate. I considered it a tax on the greedy. We only got caught once. A lone Yukatish frigate shot us down and forced a crash landing. I thought the Force had abandoned me, as I remember. Well, as it happens, getting shot down turned out to be very fortunate. That day was the day that was the day I met my wife. It's all right. When you're digging through the trash, you shouldn't be surprised when you encounter something unpleasant. If it's all the same to you, I'd prefer to stop talking now. My mouth is starting to draw flies. Let me tell you something. Once you've lived as many years as I have, you'll have yourself a long, long list of memories. If you're lucky, most of them will be good. If you're not, some will be bad. If you're really unlucky, some will be so bad you'll never want to be reminded of them again, ever. You'll go far away to a place that doesn't hold any memories at all. And there you'll be happy just to forget and be forgotten. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been in love? Truly in love, I mean, and not simple infatuation. Exactly. You're still at the beginning of your life. There will be women in your life, perhaps many women. But if you're fortunate, you'll find love once. The Jedi, with their damnable sense of over-caution, would tell you love is something to avoid. Thankfully, anyone who's even partially alive knows that's not true. Love doesn't lead to the dark side. Passion can lead to rage and fear, and can be controlled. But passion is not the same thing as love. Controlling your passions while being in love, that's what they should teach you to beware. But love itself will save you, not condemn you. Listen to me go on as if I had all the answers. What do I know of love anymore? I'm just a lonely old man who's not even a Jedi. Nope, never was. Technically, I never rose above the rank of Padawan for various reasons. Does that surprise you? In my case, becoming a Jedi would have been a formality. I doubt the Order and I would have gotten along well, considering my opinions on things such as love. I suppose I'm not prone to live my life like most of the Jedi Masters do, that's true. My opinions on love are no different. Love causes pain, certainly. Inevitably, love is going to lead to as much sorrow and regret as it does joy. I suppose there are perfect, eternal loves out there, but I haven't seen any. And how do you deal with the bad part of love is what determines your character. What determines the dark side's hold over you. Bah, a life without risk is boring. Is that how you want to live? You want love, you've got to fight for it. I'll tell you one thing. Sometimes no matter how hard you try, you and the one you love simply aren't meant to be together. The trick is to know when that is. To know when it's time to fight and when it's time to part ways. There I go, waxing philosophical again. Somebody blast me already. Let's get going before I start talking in riddles, damn it. Who said I left the Jedi? Well, technically I was only a Padawan. Not that that makes a difference to most, but as for the Order itself, no, I never left it. It left me. You know what I hate? Well, lots of things really, but I'm old and easily annoyed, but that's besides the point. What I really hate are how most people view the Jedi. Everyone thinks that the Jedi are perfect, that they can do no wrong. They think the Jedi Council is completely incapable of injustice. And I'm not even talking about how some of us fall to the dark side. No, that's plenty indication of our fallibility, but it's something else entirely. No, I'm talking about how more than often not, your average robe-wearing Jedi can try to do the right thing and still be completely wrong. I suppose I'm not being very clear, am I? Come to think of it, I don't have to be clear. Someone my age is entitled to ramble, damn it. But for your sake, I'll try to explain. I'll tell you a little tale about a Jedi master I once knew. Hortath, I think. Or was it Hartoth? I can never get it straight. Where was I then? Oh yes, Master Hortath. He was a kindly old Jedi who meant well, but the most nearsighted thing in the Corps, I swear. He would walk into walls, knock over tables, mistake apprentices for rancor beasts, that sort of thing. And he was too proud to submit to proper treatment. Some used to counsel him in the urge to use the Force, Master Hortath. Allow the Force to see for you. But he refused to believe that his eyes were failing. He simply squinted more and more as the years went on, the other Jedi resignedly passing it off as the amusing quirk of a compassionate old man. So, one day a young Padawan meets Master Hortath in the courtyard and, not knowing of his blindness, asks him for directions to the council. Quite sure of himself, Hortath gave the lad directions, which happened to lead back outside and away from the Enclave. The Padawan is confused, naturally, and he asks if Master Hortath is sure, and of course Master Hortath says that he is. The Padawan suggests that perhaps he should ask someone else, but the proud Hortath now feels insulted. He tells the Padawan to take the route he prescribed and no other. Rather dejectedly, the Padawan did as he was told, and so ended up leaving the Jedi Order forever. It was decided that the boy's fate was to leave the Order anyway, though whether that was out of respect for Hortath or because the boy went on to something else, well, we'll never know. The tale is about blindness, and I thought the point was clear. At any rate, you think about it. You're the one who asked why the Jedi left me, remember? Now let's get going. My feet are itching for a good run. Bad men. Women too, to be fair. Oh, indeed. They make a fine sandwich also. But don't tell the Jedi Council I said that. And just what gave you the impression that I know anything more about the Sith than you do? Oh, that's right. Damn the ears of the young. I was expecting you to be your usual inattentive self when I mentioned that. So it's true, yes. I fought plenty of Sith. That was during the time of Exar Kun. Oh, 40 years ago now. Has it been that long? The Sith have come and gone for ages. They were not called the Sith many thousands of years ago, perhaps. But the dark side was always present, without a doubt. Oh, sure, occasionally the light side comes close to vanquishing the dark. But the dark always returns. The fact that Exar Kun was defeated didn't mean the Sith would never return, as they obviously have now. Everyone knows that. A Sith believes he commands the Force, but it is the dark side who commands him. You know this. There is little else I could truly add. Exar was a Jedi who was corrupted by ghosts of the old Sith, or so they say. He attempted to conquer the Republic and create a new golden age of the Sith. That is not a pleasant time to remember. After Exar Kun fell to the dark side, he attempted to recruit other Jedi to his cause. What surprised us, what took us completely unprepared, was how utterly successful he was. Many Jedi joined him and became Sith themselves. Why they did, I will never truly know, but they did. Battle broke out throughout the Order, pupil against master. We fought ourselves. Oh, easy now to call them traitors. But tell me, how do you fight against someone that you love? Pah, I dislike such memories. It leaves a taste in the mouth that... it is a sadness I thought I had put aside long ago. Ask me about the war some other time, just not now. I would prefer to be by myself for now. My wife's name was Nayama. She was the Yukatis enforcer who shot me out of the sky, if you remember. My wife had plenty to do with the war. Upon meeting her, I knew right away that she was strong in the Force. That's why she was able to shoot me down. Nayama was a marvel of a woman. Fiery, determined, smart. She dragged me to the capital and foiled 3 of my attempts to escape prison. Oh, and that body. Well, yes, that. Needless to say, I eventually won her over. That was after I kidnapped her upon being broken out of the Yukatis prison, mind you. But, that's another story entirely. At any rate, I wanted to train her in the Jedi way. The Council refused my request, naturally. I was still a Padawan at the time. I was an experienced Padawan, surely, but not yet ready to be a full Jedi, and certainly not ready to train another. especially not one so old as my wife. Nayama was intrigued by the idea of becoming a Jedi. She liked the idea of power too much, perhaps, but I certainly didn't see that at the time. I believed in her and trained her in secret. I ignored her willful nature. I loved her too much to see fault in her, and she loved me too. I know she did. At the time, our love was a shared bliss, better than anything I had known before or since. Nayama was inspired by Exar's promises of a new golden age. She wanted to join him. She came to me, pleading with me to throw aside what she called the decrepit trappings of the Jedi, to join her in Exar's war. I pleaded with her to reconsider, to think about all that she was throwing away, to think about what she would become. She would have none of it. Finally, in frustration, she attacked me. She drew her lightsaber and attempted to strike me down. It was a scene being repeated everywhere throughout the galaxy. Pupil against master. In my case, it was a long and terrible battle, but I defeated her. I had her at my mercy, disarmed and defenseless. She looked up at me and she knew. She knew I couldn't do it, but I should have. Sometimes I convince myself otherwise, but it's no use. She had fallen to the dark side when she raised her saber against me. Yes, I think she truly fell the moment she raised up her saber against me. I've played that instant in my head so many times. Sometimes I convince myself that I couldn't have done otherwise, that I couldn't have seen that she had truly fallen to the dark side. But yes, I was a fool, and I let her go. To my shame, she went on to kill many Jedi during the war until she herself was slain in the final battle. I grieved for her death, inevitable as it was, even as the Jedi Council put me on trial for my actions once the war was over. I had trained Nayama against their wishes. I had failed to kill her when I had the chance, and she went on to kill others. Not to mention that I had remained a Padawan throughout the war. A formality, perhaps, but with a trial, it had to be decided if I was worthy to become a Jedi at all. It was a travesty, of course. I told you that even the Jedi were capable of great injustices, didn't I? But I deserved to be tried. They found me innocent. Even though I deserved every punishment and more, they let me go. Mitigating circumstances, they said. I deserved compassion, they said. They said I had learned wisdom the hard way. For all I had done during the war, they wished to raise me to full Jedi status at long last. That was when the Jedi left me. That was when they failed me. They may have been able to forgive me. I could never forgive myself. It is all so long ago, lost in the winds, I suppose. Nobody cares what an old man believes anymore, do they? Let's continue on with the task at hand. I would prefer to think of the present today. Oh, that was not until many years later, to tell the truth. I spent quite some time wandering the galaxy. I merely traveled from place to place. I don't even think I knew what I was searching for. It wasn't as if my travels were pleasant either. There were plenty of folks who distrusted the Jedi after the war, or worse. Not everyone would understand why the Jedi would suddenly start killing themselves and tearing up half the galaxy, would they? If people weren't treating me with suspicion, they were looking at me with greed. I don't know how many thought they could make use of me for their own ends. I got so sick of the treachery and deceit. I left the civilized parts of the galaxy and headed instead for the uncivilized parts. Actually, I was on my way somewhere else when I crash-landed on Kashyyyk. The ship I was using was a rust bucket. I'd taken some damage passing through an unexpected asteroid field, as I recall, but I wasn't completely without some systems. I could still guide her a bit when I crashed. It wasn't what I would call the smoothest landing, especially considering I ended up smack in the depths of the Shadowlands. But I lived. It seemed like an interesting enough place to spend a couple of decades exploring. You've seen the kind of creatures that exist down there, and you miss the really big ones. I was still able to rely on the Force to keep me safe for the most part. The rest of the trick is keeping out of the way of most of the predators. Still, most of the creatures grew accustomed to me, and I to them. At least none of them ever heard of a Jedi. I'd done enough wandering by that point, thank you very much. I felt at peace in the Shadowlands. I can't say I was overly pleased to encounter a group of indigenous giant carpets either, I can assure you of that. I was the intruder in their land, after all. They got to trust me well enough after a couple of decades of my aid. At first, when the slavers took to hunting down lone Wookiees in the fringes of the Shadowlands, I did my best to divert them. Later, when Shundar made his deal, I didn't see any point. I wasn't here to save them from their own sad follies, after all. When I could, I would assist a few young ones who would get lost in the Shadowlands or attacked unexpectedly by the wildlife. I must say, for a while there, the Wookiees actually thought I was some kind of benevolent forest god. Amusing, really. I set them straight eventually. I had no idea that's what they were thinking for a long time. I just thought they were being friendly neighbors, leaving fruit and such for me. Later, when I started to understand some of their grunting, I realized they would say prayers to the Hairless One before descending into the forest. Hairless One. I used to have plenty of hair, I tell you. At any rate, it took a few bruises, but I set the record straight. I traveled to Rookworo and met with the chieftain in front of everyone. Freyr swatted at me just to see if I was real or not. I was real, and while it was a light swat, Wookiees are terribly strong. I was knocked out cold for a day. The Wookiees all thought it was quite funny. Kashyyyk is a place you can feel very small in. It felt good to devote my time to helping people and living simply. What can I say? I did it all for the Wookiees. The Wookiees. Well, okay, maybe I needed some time on a quiet and remote planet, but if you ever need a friend, an incredibly strong hairball isn't a bad call, despite the smell. For a race of gardeners, they've developed quite interestingly. You remember the alien computer, correct? Kashyyyk was meant to be an agricultural planet. The Wookiees were made for a reason, or at least that's what I'm thinking. But I'm an old man who's had a long time to develop that opinion, so don't argue with me. At any rate, we should be moving along, don't you think? If you sat around this long in the Shadowlands, attack would eat you. Are we back to that again? What's the best way for me to approach this? Perhaps it's time for a little story. You just keep quiet there, you. I've had to put up with all your busybody questions, haven't I? Well, now you'll listen to a story, damn it. Now, where was I? Oh, yes, the story. You almost made me forget about it. Nice try, but I'm not that old just yet. Now then, a young man sees a terribly venomous snake in his small village. Nervous, he watches the snake carefully until it leaves. The young man follows the snake into the forest. He clears the branches out of its path and helps it over obstacles. He even works to keep it fed. Shush! Many nights pass, and still the young man continues to follow the snake. He even follows it into the sands of the great desert. In the desert, the snake eventually grows hungry. It turns and bites the young man, its poison quickly working its way into his system. Finally, curious, the snake looks at the boy as he lays dying and asks, "Why were you foolish enough to follow me all the way out into the desert?" The boy looks back and replies, "Did I follow you? I thought I was leading you away from everyone else." And then he died. I've come a long way as it is, and I'm going to die anyway, so that doesn't bother me in the least. I've told you before that you have a destiny before you. This does not mean, however, that your future is already written. They are not the same thing. You have the choice of which direction you take your destiny in. More than engine-sucking Andor, certainly, but even he had a choice. So far, you've chosen to take the lighter path. Can you stay that course, even through the challenges ahead? We'll have to wait and see. I'm not here to judge you or tell you which path to take. I'm here ready to offer you my help, should you ask for it. I do that because I think it's important. More important than remaining in my home and pretending the galaxy doesn't exist. That's why I'm here. I'm rather glad I came too, really. You're a fine young lad. I hope things turn out well for you. Now then, I've chatted enough for one lifetime. Let's get this show on the road, shall we?